As Finn's mother drifted off to sleep at a few minutes past 11, her body twitched in a serious convulsion that rocked the bed. She sat bolt upright, throwing the covers off the bed. Her husband reached down, pulled the covers back up, and went back to snoring. The code! Her mind had played tricks on her by replaying as a dream the afternoon spent sorting out the code with Finn and his friends, Willa and Philby. Wayne's missing. She recalled Finn telling her, accidentally telling her. If she were any judge of her son, how could she have been so stupid? The code had nothing whatsoever to do with any competition, and everything to do with Wayne going missing. It had all made so much sense in her quick dream. She relived the expressions on the faces of the kids as they worked together to solve the code. They exchanged glances. How could she have been so obtuse to miss it at all the time? She threw her legs over the edge of the bed, tugged at her nightgown to straighten it, and hurried out of her bedroom and down the hall. Late or not, she had every intention of confronting Finn. The family policy was no lying. They were not about to change that policy just because Finn was a teenager. If anything, it was more important than ever. She opened the door to his room, moved to the bed, and hesitated a moment as she saw her son's peaceful face cast in the glow of his various electronics. In that instant, the thought crossed her mind to turn around and leave this for the morning. How could she disturb his peace over some dream she had? Why was she so suspicious of her own son? Where had her trust gone? She turned around and took 2 steps back towards the door, but then she spun around sharply, her eyes scanning the floor. She'd been working on Finn for 5 years, more like 10, she thought, to put his clothes away when he took them off. She'd even bought him his own laundry hamper, yet every morning there were his clothes the day before, strewn about the room as if a tornado hit. So where were they? No boots, no pants, no shirt. The anger she'd felt in the bedroom resurfaced. The seesaw of emotion was exhausting her. While her adrenaline was still charged, she marched to the bed and gently pulled back the covers. Fully dressed, no pajamas. Could this possibly mean? She shook his shoulder.
Finn? Sweetheart?
She shook him harder. In the past 2 years, he'd taken to sleeping so soundly she could sometimes have a bear of a time waking him.
Finn, dear.
Not a twitch, not a complaint. He didn't roll over. He didn't squint or moan or tell her to go away. He didn't move. It was as if...
Oh, Lord.
She stepped back, away from the bed, her bottom lip trembling, and crossed her arms, tears forming in her eyes. She returned to his bedside and shook him again.
Finn? Finn! Finn, this isn't funny!
She shook him so hard that his lifeless, limp, sleeping body just rocked back and forth like... She couldn't bring herself to admit what it was like.
Wake up! Wake up!
Tears spilled from her blotchy face as droplets on his pillow.
You did not do this. Tell me you did not do this. Where are you? Come back. Please, God, come back.
It took Philby 3 tries to find the right door, but finally he got himself, Amanda, and Finn into the back of the Mayan temple and up its long staircase. They reached a glassed-in booth at the top. It was high enough and well disguised enough so that it could be seen by park guests from within Epcot. Finn used all clear to enter the control room and unlock the door. Inside, it looked like a miniature version of something NASA would build. There was a wraparound console with 2 computers, several dials and switches, and 2 phones.
Illuminations. This is where they run the music and lasers for the show. Maybe even the fireworks. I can't tell, but if I had to guess...
So you're saying don't touch anything?
Amanda, the idea is that by being here, maybe you can see the Overtakers move around. Tell us what's going on. You touch any of these buttons or mess with the computers, and you announce to the whole park that something is way wrong. You also tell them exactly where you are, and they'll come after you. So whatever you do...
I've got it.
You sure?
I'm sure.
Together, the 3 tested different locations, discovering that there was a projection shadow beneath the main console. If you tucked yourself under the console on hands and knees, you disappeared. Knowing that invisibility could prove critically important to her survival, Amanda took a seat in the center chair behind a console. The boys left her there, Charlene's cell phone in hand, Amanda's DHI glowing just enough to allow her to see the console panel clearly. In its center, there was a single word on a plaque: danger.
They could have tried to make it girl-boy. You know, like every girl had to have a boy with her to keep her safe. Personally, I'm glad we were teamed up the way we are.
I've never done anything like this. Not exactly like this.
It's a lot to get used to, I know. Being crossed over is not exactly what you'd call normal, is it?
Definitely not.
The important thing is for you and me to stick together. Safety in numbers and all that.
And if we're... I don't know, attacked?
Overtakers? We try to avoid them. If we can't, then we run, and if we have to, we split up and meet at the rendezvous when it's safe. And when you can, you want to practice going all clear. Finn got it really early. Maybeck managed it once. And Philby too. If you can pull that off, you can do things like walk through walls, and if someone tries to grab you, they can't. Not that I'd know. But with your powers, or whatever you call what it is you do.
Dreams.
Yeah. Your dreams. Maybe you can figure it out quicker than the rest of us. Finn says it's all about relaxation. About not thinking about anything.
That's so easy for me. I tend to think about the present and the future. I'm not so sure I could just turn that off.
Good point. For now, we just stick close and try to figure out if there's anything different about Soren. Any clue Wayne might be wanting us to get. The first time we did this, we had to solve the Stonecutter's quill, and the clues were pretty obvious. Last time...
I was the one giving clues.
Exactly.
So do we know what kind of clue Wayne might leave us?
Something weird. Wayne is definitely weird, and it won't be obvious. He never makes it easy.
That doesn't exactly narrow things.
No, it doesn't.
So it could be anything.
Hopefully we'll know it when, if we see it. But we should try to remember everything we see and hear. Maybe it won't make sense until later.
I love Soren.
Me too. But if the Overtakers are in control of it, maybe not so much.
Like Small World.
Exactly. You never know what to expect.
I'm kinda scared.
They'd been sneaking along the edge of the path and were now only 50 yards from the entrance to Soren.
Finn says that's a good thing, but I think he only says that. I don't think he actually means it. I think what he actually means is you can't help but being scared, so you've just got to learn to live with it.
So you're scared too?
Definitely. As cool as it is to go on these rides when the parks are closed, more often than not, something bad happens. I can't help but be apprehensive, I guess you'd say.
You say apprehensive, I say scared.
That'll work.
Willa smiled faintly, her DHI sparking in the dark. Creepy was more like it. She and Jess entered the Soren Pavilion and went up the waiting line ramp between huge aerial photographs that gave Willa the chilling sensation that she was being watched. As they pushed through the door and into the vast chamber that fronted a curved white projection screen 60 feet high, an automated voice spoke into the cavernous theater. If you have loose-fitting shoes such as slip-ons or sandals, please remove them once you take your seat, and leave them on the floor in front of you. If you have any carry-ons that are too large or fragile to fit inside the under-seat compartments, please leave them on the floor in front of you as well, and our flight attendants will be happy to store them for you. Thank you, and have a nice flight.
The ride is about to start.
We're 1 minute to go.
Jess pulled up on Willa, wanting to leave immediately. Willa shook her head, held her finger to her lips, and pointed to the back bench of seats. As far as she was concerned, if there was someone in here doing something, then maybe that was what Wayne wanted them to discover. It seemed incredibly late at night to be running tests. Although she had no idea when regular maintenance was done on the rides, and she supposed nighttime was the only free time the engineers had, if she and Jess could get into the third row seats once the mechanism lifted, they would be well back into the dark room. If they held their legs up and kept them from dangling, they would be basically impossible to spot. She pulled Jess with her. They took middle seats, more hidden than the end seats, and pulled their legs up into their chests, wrapping their arms around their shins.
We're going 30.
Rachel, let's watch the sync on the aroma trigger.
It was a man's voice from off to their left. Willa caught a glimpse of stairs rising from the left of the hall, something she'd never seen before. At once, the room grew even darker. Loud music started. Willa felt a flutter in her chest. She loved this ride, her favorite in all of Disney World. But something told her this wouldn't be any ordinary flight. If they were testing the equipment, didn't that mean there was a problem? Jess reached over and laid her hand on Willa's right arm and squeezed. Willa, in the glow from the screen, indicated that Jess should grip her legs with her arms. They had to keep from being seen at all costs. As the mechanism began to lift and rotate, Willa caught a man's silhouette passing in front of the screen, heading in the direction of Rachel, whom she could now see was standing at a console at the screen's lower right corner. The man caught up to Rachel, and the two shouted at each other over the roar of the music. Willa looked up. New York City, not California as she expected. She and Jess were flying over the skyscrapers and diving down into the avenues. They banked steeply, then sharply right, and the air smelled of bagels as they reached a bridge. A seagull squawked, and Willa had to claim her hand over her mouth to keep her squeal from being heard. They were changing the location of the flight. Rachel and the man were troubleshooting the timing and the effects. Suddenly, the air smelled of hot dogs and mustard. Far in the distance, Willa could see a long beach crowded with families in sunsuits. The water was frothing white from thousands more out swimming. The girls pitched down, diving toward the beach. "No, no, no!" shouted the man. The music stopped, the screen went dark. Then a few emergency or work lights came on. Willa and Jess were well hidden, but they were hanging facing down, in the dive position. If Rachel or the man happened to look up, Willa knew she and Jess would be spotted, making things more difficult. It felt as if she was going to fall out of the seat.
We need the smell of hot dogs on the Coney Island flyover. Mr. Devlin, we need to move aroma effect number 2, 21.5 seconds forward. Something's wrong with the time code.
Roger that, John. I see that here too. I'll sync Aroma effect 2 with the flyover, and we'll go again.
We'll wait for your say-so.
Willa glanced over at Jess to see how she was doing. Her eyes went wide. Jess might have been doing fine, but her hair cascaded over her head like a barrette on the side and was slowly creeping down her hair, drawn by gravity. If Willa called out to Jess, she might be heard. If she reached over and touched her, Jess might jerk, and if she did, the barrette was going to fall down. It slipped another inch, and judging by her expression, this time Jess felt it and knew she didn't dare move. Willa stretched, trying to reach the barrette, but came up several inches short. Letting go of her leg to do so, she allowed it briefly to hang down. She strained against the safety belt, trying to buy herself the precious few inches needed. As she did, Jess moved, however slightly, and the barrette slid down the remainder of her hair and went airborne like a small black moth with rhinestones. Willa swiped the air and missed the barrette. Instinctively, her leg kicked out to stop it. It was a soccer move, like trapping and balancing a ball on top of your foot. The barrette now lay atop Willa's Converse sneaker, perched there. If she moved her leg in the slightest, it was going to slip off. More walkie-talkie chatter. Willa was too consumed with the balancing act to pay attention. But then the words rang out. Good to go in 30 seconds. She knew she had trouble. She bent and lifted her knee, trying to bring the barrette high enough that either she or Jess could grab it. But in the process, it slipped from her shoe, and her reflex was to kick it straight out. It was a perfect kick, connecting with the barrette. She sent it flying toward the screen. It careened off a piece of steel superstructure and into the seat of seats suspended a row in front of them. It disappeared. Though loose, it did not fall to the floor. The theater went dark and the flight started again. This time the ride might have been more exciting since she knew at least some of what to expect. But Willa's full concentration was on the row of seats ahead of them and the unseen hair clip. As they dove down toward Coney Island, the smell of hot dogs filled the air.
Yes, that's better.
They buzzed a windsurfer and water sprayed in their faces. There was no music now, just the light sound of wind. Crack, an abrupt, brittle sound.
Full stop.
The music and film stopped, and the cars descended. As Willa approached the poured concrete floor, she spotted Jess's barrette on the floor, up near the front of the 3 rows of seats. She tried her seatbelt, locked. Tried it again, locked. The rows of seats hit bottom and came to a full stop. The seatbelt released. She tapped Jess on the forearm, and Jess released her seatbelt as well. They had to get away from that hair clip. They couldn't make it for the entrance as they stepped right into the view of the man and Rachel. Willa took Jess by the hand, crouched, and made a mad dash for the far wall and the staircase she spotted. Reaching the end of the line of the machinery, she paused, holding Jess back. It had to be timed exactly right. The man walked past the first row, no doubt searching for the source of the unfamiliar sound. His eyes would be trained on the floor. 3, 2. She raced across the open space, Jess right behind her, and reached the staircase. She pulled them flat against the wall, wishing more than ever that she'd perfected the art of all clear.
It's a hair thingamabobby. Someone lost it, and it chooses now to fall off. Can you believe that dumb luck? Stop the whole test for a freaking hair clip. Okay, let's run it again.
Willa pointed up the stairs to a red and white exit sign. She turned an imaginary crank by the side of her head, signaling Jess that they would make their move when the film ran again.
30 seconds.
Jess nodded back at Willa, looking terrified and sick to death with guilt.
You okay?
Jess squinted and put her hand to head.
Now I keep seeing something.
As in?
Yes, like my dreams, like that. And the thing is, I've seen it before in my other dreams, recently. Like, as in the past couple of days. rectangles, buttons maybe? A TV, I think. And I've seen it twice tonight. The same pattern. It's always the same pattern.
Buttons? Like the kind you sew on?
The kind you push.
Mission space.
What?
Buttons, monitors, that's mission space. I think you're on the wrong ride.
At nearly the same moment Jess and Willa entered Soren, Finn and Philby had been poised outside the test track pavilion.
What do you think?
Tucked behind a fast-pass kiosk to the right of the entrance, the boys were keeping an eye out for trouble.
I'm thinking about those crash test dummies.
Yeah, me too.
And how this is where they live.
I'm with you.
And that we're basically asking for it.
I hear you.
But we're going in there, aren't we?
We are.
I suppose if we can all clear, we're okay.
It's hard to do when everything's coming at you at once.
It's hard to do, period. You're the all-clear expert. I'm a newbie.
I don't know if I could do it with a pair of crash test dummies coming after me.
But it's because of the crash test dummies that we have to go in there. Oh, am I missing something?
That, and the flying thing.
Finn looked down at the sword in his hand.
I feel totally stupid carrying this thing around with me.
Live with it. I think Wayne wants us to have it.
Besides which, it's heavy. Have you ever lugged a sword around? It's like carrying a tuba.
You play tuba?
I did for 2 weeks in the 5th grade. Then I got wise and switched to trumpet.
I'm clarinet. And I sing in our church's youth choir. But if you tell anyone, I have to kill you.
If the crash test dummies don't do it for you.
Don't kid around like that.
Like what? You think I'm kidding? If those things get a hold of us, it's not likely they have brains or something. They're obviously being controlled by someone or something else. And we both know who that is.
Programmed is more like it. My guess is that at some point the Imagineers toyed with the idea of audio-animatronic crash test dummies. There were probably a couple of those things lying around in a room somewhere, and the Overtakers got hold of them and enlisted them by updating the software. That's the thing about this place. The Imagineers are like human wizards. They think up all this stuff, half of which none of us ever sees. But someone knows it exists, right? And in the wrong hands, well, the thing is, there's probably a lot more stuff like the dummies. Stuff we've never even thought of before that can be used against us.
Are you trying to give me a pep talk?
I'm just saying, all of us, should keep our eyes open. And we shouldn't trust anything we see. And we should be looking for stuff we don't see. We know Maleficent can transfigure herself into various animals, and who knows what Chernobog can do? Who knows what the two of them can do together? All I'm saying is, if crash test dummies are out patrolling on segways, and trolls are coming alive in Maelstrom, and just as they're attacking the girls in France, then this whole place is lit up by overtakers, you know what I mean? They're like, volume on 10, they are working it, and we need to be ready for them, because we're who they're after. In the world, we're the bad guys, and we know what happens to the bad guys.
You are really depressing me here.
Reality check, that's all.
Can we go inside now? You've got me totally paranoid.
If something happens, you go all clear and get gone. Don't worry about me. If one of us gets out of this, it's way better than if we're both caught, right? Now, I know you come back for me, so no heroics. Just get out and figure something out and come back. I'm good with that.
Not going to happen.
No heroics.
I've got your back. Now let's take a ride.
Mission Space was basically a bunch of pods on a giant turntable. Maybeck held an arm out to keep Charlene from going any farther into the room. She was a little too cheerleader for him, a little too gung-ho, It worried him that she might be more athletic than he was, might show him up in some way. He didn't want her making him look bad.
I hate this ride. I went on it once, and I felt sick for the rest of the day.
I thought we ended up together on this because we could both take it.
Who said I can't take it?
I thought you just did.
Did not. I said it made me feel funky, not that I couldn't take it. But you're the one that does all the flips and gymnastics stuff, not me.
That's the point. I love this ride. It goes so fast, it peels your face back.
Yeah, terrific.
If you want to be Lookout, I can do this alone. It's not like anyone has to know.
Are you calling me a chicken, girl?
That would be no. It was only an offer.
Well, keep it.
Maybeck cut himself off, reaching for his pocket where his phone was vibrating. He checked the caller ID and answered.
Not the best timing. Say again? Are you serious?
He gave Charlene a weird look.
Can she describe it? No. Not now. 3 minutes. Call me back in 3 minutes.
He ended the call and returned the phone to his pants pocket.
Madame Houdini has been having visions about this ride.
FYI, Houdini was an escape artist, not a clairvoyant.
Yeah? Well, Miss Clairvoyant's been zooming on the mission space, according to the Willa tree. Something to do with buttons and TV screens.
And
she's going to describe it to us once we're inside one of these pods.
So we should get going.
Yeah, we should get going.
So why are we standing here with your arm blocking me?
Because it looks too easy. How can it be this easy? It's almost like they're inviting us to get into one of those pods.
That may be right, but there's only one way to find out.
I told you that I hate this ride, yeah?
You might have mentioned it, but you're tougher than the other guys, right?
You're gonna head trip me?
I'm building your confidence.
My phone's gonna ring. We gotta get in there.
I'll go first.
The heck you will.
He crossed the curved crack in the floor. It had appeared when the ride began, allowing the floor-sized turntable to spin, and approached the nearest pod. To the left of the closed door was a pale blue panel containing 4 green buttons. The bottom left button was marked Door Open, written vertically. The 2 on the top were marked Door Closed and Seat Restraint. The bottom button wasn't labeled.
Give me your phone.
What?
Don't you get it? One of us has to be out here to push the door closed and seat restraint buttons for the other person.
Maybeck studied the panel for a second time.
You think?
I know. That's the only way it's going to start.
Maybe it doesn't need to start. Maybe we just go into the pod and look around.
And there are how many pods? And a whole nother room of pods next door. You think we picked the right one?
How should I know?
Give me your phone. I trust Jess. This has something to do with Jess and her dreams. I accept that, even if you don't.
I didn't say anything.
You called her Houdini.
He looked guilty as charged. She held her hand out. Maybeck passed her his phone. On screen, the hang glider flight dove over Yankee Stadium on its way back toward Manhattan. A crowd of 50,000 cheered for a Derek Jeter home run as the smell of popcorn filled the air. Jess and Willa used the cacophony as cover, fleeing up the staircase toward the exit side. Willa made the mistake of looking back at the screen and lost her balance as the route dipped left over the East River. Jess reached out and caught her just as Willa was about to fall down the stairs.
Don't look.
Both girls averted their eyes, looking up the stairs instead of down, toward the back of the theater instead of the exit. Jess caught sight of something Willa did not. As they approached the exit door, Jess nudged her and pointed.
Projection room.
Yeah?
I think we need to check it out.
Because?
It's an IMAX projector.
So?
They're super cold, as in very low temperature, and majorly climate controlled.
You're channeling Philby all of a sudden?
Listen, I wrote a report for science class. I happen to love IMAX theaters and anything 3D. I know all about that booth, and believe me, it would be Maleficent heaven, or a perfect place to hide Wayne. Think about it. No one goes in there, it's all automated, it's kept cool, it's climate controlled, and it's all tucked up at the back of this theater, way out of the way.
I suppose it could have been the reason Soren showed up on the maintenance list.
So we're going in there.
I think we are.
Holding on to the rail, Jess looked back at the screen. The hang glider was flying down Broadway toward Times Square at night. It was a magnificent sight.
Right about now, I wish I had Finn's sword.
We'll make the call from inside the booth. It'll be quieter. But shouldn't we tell someone what we're doing, where we're going? What if they don't hear from us again and can't find us?
Willa took back the phone and started typing in a text. Jess couldn't tell for certain, given the flicking light from the film, but she thought Willa's face had gone suddenly pale. Test Track's waiting line turned back on itself, weaving through a General Motors assembly line of car parts, partly constructed vehicles, and testing areas where car doors were removed to test the durability of their hinges. Empty. It was a confusing tangle of steel railings, a labyrinth of tools and heavy machinery. Finn and Philby moved through the line slowly, on high alert, both feeling uneasy. No matter how many times they had entered attractions or taken rides after a park's closing, the events always had a haunted quality about them, as if removing the people removed the life of the place as well, leaving only ghosts behind. They had encountered overtakers or succumbed to traps so many times that they now expected them. The characters took over the parks after closing, and the overtakers did their best to take over the characters. The DHI kids could not enter into this conflict without a strong sense of personal risk. Finn and Philby kept their heads up, their eyes moving and their ears alert. An attack could come from anywhere at any time.
You smell it?
A metallic, dusty aroma filled the air, like the air during a lightning storm.
Could be just the machinery. There's a lot of stuff in here.
Or it could be her.
When Maleficent entered a room, that same electronic smell preceded her. She could throw fireballs, St. Elmo's fires, off the tip of her fingers. She could draw laser-like electric fences in the air to contain and capture the Kingdom Keepers. She was clearly capable of generating her own electricity, like an electric eel. The smell in the air set both Finn and Philby back on their heels. Contained within the rails of the waiting line, they turned to see an audio animatronic mechanic, an old man, maybe 40 or 50, with fat hands and red trinks, sitting by a flashing computer monitor. They both stopped short at the moment, reminded of the crash test dummies. They stood perfectly still. The dummy did not move. They advanced cautiously, inches at a time, their eyes never leaving the dummy for long. A moment later, they looked back at the mechanic as they passed a half a dozen traffic signs. The line moved over against the wall here. They were getting closer to the loading zone and the start of the ride. They passed through the empty turnstiles and on through the darkened room where usually a nerdy guy who looked like a young Dan Patrick from ESPN talked you through what you'd experienced on the ride.
It isn't what we'd normally go through that worries me. It's what we don't expect to happen.
With you there.
They entered the loading area and moved to the far end where a car awaited.
Ready?
Are you sure this is even possible?
Philby's plan was for him to go up into the control booth and start the ride while Finn took a seat in the lead car.
There has to be at least one seatbelt fastened for a car to move. Since the second car won't have any seatbelts fastened, it won't start up. The others can't go either, but even if they could, the computer will hold them back. It'll mean ours is the only car out there, and I trust that a lot more than some car coming up from behind us and hitting us, or forcing us to go faster, or something.
But that also means I'll be strapped in, and you won't.
That's correct. If I hurry, I can jump into the car in time. The seatbelt may not work at that point. I don't know.
These were 3 words no one heard from Philby's mouth. Finn savored hearing them and almost made a point of it, but decided to keep his celebration to himself.
If we see something, if for any reason it's needed, if I'm not strapped in, I can get back out of the car and meet you back at the start of the ride.
We shouldn't separate. That's one of the rules.
Rules are made to be broken, Finn. You know that. This is just one of those times.
Couldn't we just skip the cars and walk the test track?
The cars trigger the scene events. If Wayne left us a clue, if he wants us to see something, it'll be somewhere along the ride. We need the scene events and the effects engaged.
I still don't love the idea of me being strapped in and you not being.
I'll hold on tight, believe me, Mother. It's the only way to start the ride. It's this or we bail right now.
Okay.
Finn didn't feel right about doing it this way. They instituted the buddy rule after losing Maybeck, and so far the rule had kept them safe. But Philby had convinced himself there was no other way, and Philby knew this stuff. The loading area was gloomy, with most lights turned off. Thankfully, there were no crash test dummies in sight. Finn climbed down into the lead car and fastened his seatbelt. He laid the sword on the bench next to him. The click of the belt issued a sense of finality that he found disturbing. He drew in a deep breath and turned to find Philby looking down through the control booth's window. Finn gave him a thumbs up. Philby returned the gesture. There was a loud popping sound. The car hummed and vibrated slightly. It rolled forward. Finn looked back over his shoulder to see Philby hurrying down a ladder and dodging obstacles and vaulting line railings in an effort to reach the moving car. Lights blinked overhead with the car's movement. The ride was coming online. Philby had done it. Philby was now only a few yards from the end of the loading dock and running fast. He had a good chance of reaching the car in time. Finn spotted someone in the shadows, the same mechanic they'd been afraid of in the waiting line. The mechanic they'd seen at the same time they'd smelled the electricity in the air. He carried a heavy wrench in his right hand.
Look out!
Finn shouted. Philby skidded to a stop and ducked just in time as the wrench ripped through the air where Philby's head would have been.
Catch!
He tossed the sword, pommel first to Philby, who caught the grip perfectly. As the car paused at dispatch for what announced as a seatbelt check, not that there was anyone checking his, he looked back. The mechanic took another swipe at Philby with the wrench. Philby caught the wrench with the sword blade and a clanking of metal rang out. Finn twisted in the seat to watch. His test car faced the hill climb. He saw 2 more contacts between the wrench and the blade, sparks shooting off at the second. Philby went down on one knee with the second blow, and the last thing Finn saw as the car climbed out of sight of the loading area was the mechanic lowering the wrench toward Philby's head with a vicious deliberateness. Charlene got the call seconds after Maybeck hit the seat restraint button. Jess spoke softly into the phone, and so it was difficult for Charlene to hear.
I see a screen, like a TV screen. There are 2 squares beneath it on either side and switches to the side. 3 labels. Willa thinks the labels mean it's your ride, Mission Space.
Yes, she's right. I'm looking at a bunch of screens right now, and there's a gazillion square buttons and switches all over the place.
Valves, hypersleep, first stage. Those are the labels. I don't know what they mean or even if they mean something, but Willa thinks it's important.
Charlene repeated the 3 labels, her eyes searching the console. The hypersleep button was directly below the engineer screen. Next, she spotted the first stage SEP button below the commander screen.
That's all I got.
Charlene thanked her and was about to ask her to describe the location of the valves button when the doors hissed. Maybeck hit the button. The door was about to close.
I need you in here!
She shouted to Maybeck, realizing that with her seatbelt locked around her waist, she couldn't reach the first stage button, only the hypersleep.
Now!
For once, Maybeck listened to someone else. He dove through the opening as the door slid shut, landing across her knees, extended the full length of the capsule. He caught a foot and just wrenched it free, his running shoe coming off as the door sealed shut. Charlene had reached out to pull on his leg to free his stuck foot. It was in that confusion that her eye lit up upon a set of switches stacked vertically. Electrics, hydraulics, valves. Valves, she realized. They were in such an out-of-the-way location, she might have missed them entirely had she not reached for Maybeck's leg. But now, as the interior lights went dark, rendering the capsule pitch black, and a screen flickered, showing a blue sky filled with soft white clouds, she worked to imprint the exact location of those switches, to her right and a little lower than her elbow.
How long is this ride?
Maybeck had pulled himself to sitting, feet on the floor, facing the far left screen.
I don't know, 5 minutes? Feels a lot longer than that. That's what I'm guessing. Did I have to mention that I hate this ride?
The screen showed they were lining up with the launch program. The pod began to shake, and the roar of rocket engines drowned out all thought.
We have to focus. We have 5 minutes to figure out these buttons.
Keep your eyes open at all
what
times
buttons?
And focus straight ahead, even if you start to feel disoriented. They're all yours, Capcom.
You take the commander screen.
Good luck, Mars team.
Got it.
You are on the clock.
Lower left button is marked.
First stage SEP.
That's it. I've got the hypersleep button, and I hope the valve switch. My guess is that we need to work these buttons in the right order, and something will happen.
That doesn't sound so great. What if we don't want it to happen?
The capsule lifted, and as it did, the force driving Charlene back into her seat became intense. She sensed the capsule spinning and began to feel dizzy.
Note self. I could easily get hurt, or pass out, or whatever. So if we're going to do something, it was just sooner than later.
The liftoff was causing the capsule to feel like it might break apart.
What happens first?
Stage separation.
I know that much, and that's you, okay?
And right away.
He spit out. At that instant, the narrator's voice instructed the commander. Initiate first stage preparation. Now. The first stage SEP button lit up.
Push the button and hold it. Do not let go.
Got it. Hyperspace is next.
The mission control woman told them they were looking good. Maybeck had a few choice words for her, but kept them to himself. The man's voice told the pilot to fire the second stage rockets.
Don't do anything.
But what if...
It's not part of Wayne's instructions.
But we're not even sure.
Do not touch any buttons. Not until I say so.
Who put you in charge?
You did, remember? You wanted me in the capsule. Well, here I am.
They might have been able to see each other given the glow of the monitors, but Charlene couldn't sit forward. She was pasted back in her seat. The capsule slingshot around the moon, and the mission control man told the engineer to activate hyperspace.
Okay.
He said hyperspace, not hypersleep.
Yeah? Well, we're making this up as we go.
She could see Maybeck's outstretched arm. Thankfully, he was still holding the first stage SEP button. While holding the hypersleep button, she stretched out to find the valve switch. She felt it in the dark. Top switch, middle switch, lower switch. She walked her fingers up and counted them again. She talked to herself.
Top electrics, middle valves, lower hydraulics.
What's going on? We're about to crash on Mars.
I'm going to throw the switch. Hold on.
Hold on. I'm flat as a pancake over here. Charlene, I'm about to lose my cookies. And that makes pancakes and cookies. And that's not pretty.
Charlene touched the switch, hesitating only a heartbeat. Then she pushed it down. Suddenly, the pressure against her chest tripled.
It's speeding up.
I know!
She managed to choke it out, but she could barely breathe. Willa turned the handle of the projector.
Hey! You may be wondering where the rest of the episode is. Me too! My computer crashed, which took away all of my saved files, including the files for this episode. That was 85 pages of work. Hours of episode. Gone like that. So, we're doing a two-parter this week. Next week, the Kingdom Keepers will be back while I lose my sanity. Anyways...